The most recent maniac of the Soviet Union, Oleg Kuznetsov, kept the whole Moscow region in fear for several months. For a long time his victims did not report to the police, because of the unwillingness to make public the fact of abuse. In 1991, one of Kuznetsov's victims wrote a statement. To avoid arrest, Kuznetsov left for Kiev. But the maniac could not give up his attacks, and after that, he decided not to leave his victims alive. Vladimirovich Kuznetsov is a Soviet, Russian and Ukrainian serial maniac. In 1991 to 1992, he took the lives of 10 girls and women aged 15 to 30 years. The future serial killer Oleg Kuznetsov learned the joy of sexual relations quite early. He was only 16 years old when he slept with a woman much older than himself. By the time it was time to join the army, he already had a pretty impressive list of partners. He knew how to please a woman. Oleg was quite seriously involved in sports, had the first category in biathlon, engaged in hand-to-hand combat. He was athletic and fit, and besides, he had a rather attractive appearance. So, that women pecked at him quite actively. But there was one problem. Kuznetsov almost immediately realized that he could get the greatest pleasure only when he tormented his partner. It is quite possible that his sexual preferences were influenced by his father's harsh upbringing.
Hey, I'm not going to beat around the bush. You have to subscribe to the channel and like it so you don't miss new videos.
When Oleg was 5 years old, his parents divorced. Kuznetsov stayed to live with his father in his new family. The mother of the future maniac lived in the same house, the same as Kuznetsov. But the father categorically forbade his son to communicate with his mother. So it turned out that, despite the fact that Kuznetsov often encountered his own mother, he was afraid to even talk to her. By the way, after the arrest Kuznetsov will claim that his crimes are to blame for a difficult childhood and lack of maternal affection. What 99% of all maniacs talk about. Kuznetsov's classmates noted that, despite playing sports, Oleg was quite cowardly. At the slightest danger of a violent collision, Kuznetsov preferred to flee. He did not use authority in the yard and at school. But this did not prevent Kuznetsov from showing off in front of women, telling about his mythical exploits. As already mentioned, women were led to the appearance of a maniac, and therefore finding a new girlfriend for Kuznetsov was not a problem. And even when the future maniac joined the army, he got to serve as a driver in Kiev. He constantly went AWOL to spend time with another passion. Surprisingly, even when Kuznetsov hurt his partners, many of them did not immediately break off relations with a handsome young man. There is information that even before the army and during his service, Kuznetsov committed several outrages. He committed the first massacre on May 7, 1991. Kuznetsov was working as a truck driver at that time. The victim asked him for a ride home. On the way, Kuznetsov got into conversation with the girl, offered her a drink. Kuznetsov stopped the car in a copse near the suburban village Kapavna-Balashika district. There a couple engaged in sexual intercourse. However, in the morning, the girl informed Kuznetsov that he had to pay for the night of love, otherwise she would hand him over to the police. This enraged Kuznetsov, as a result of which he committed the first deprivation of life. Kuznetsov beat the girl with a tire iron. Her body was discovered by bystanders. But I want to clarify that this is only from the words of the criminal. No one really knows how it was. For some reason it seems to me that the girl could refuse him and he simply abused her and took her life, and gave the law enforcement officers a version that the girl allegedly requested money. But we won't know how it was, so I'm telling you the information that is. From May to November 1991, he committed a series of outrages in Balashika and neighboring districts of the Moscow region. Sometimes he made 2 a day. Later, Kuznetsov will confirm that he has at least 500 forced acts of girls and women on his account. Maybe he exaggerated, but even if there were fewer of them, all the same, almost all the victims did not even think to report to the police, thereby condemning others to the same fate. The maniac, who felt the taste of impunity, went hunting more and more often. On the night of November 12 to 13, 1991, threatening with a knife, he committed coercion at one of the Balashikha cemeteries. The victim had a good look at the attacker and claimed him to the police. Kuznetsov escaped from Balashikha on the same day. Taking advantage of the collapse of the USSR and the separation of Ukraine, he moved to Kiev, where he once served, believing that no one would look for him there in the confusion associated with the collapse. Here he quickly got a mistress, with whom he settled. In the same days, the maniac decided to take the lives of all his victims. In Kiev, Kuznetsov took 4 lives: Svetlana Malenko, Svetlana Murantseva, Alla Kononova and Natalia Ivanchikova, and abused and robbed them all. They were committed on January 6, 19, 24 and 27, 1992, respectively. He deprived some of his victims of eyeballs. The maniac gave his mistress some of the victims' belongings. The last attack was unsuccessful. The girl to whom Kuznetsov introduced himself as Dmitry Fedi from Balashikha fought back and gave a description of the attacker. In operational and investigative circles, a maniac, he received the nickname False Dmitry. After the unsuccessful attack on the girl in February, Kuznetsov was almost caught by the policeman who identified him from the sketch, but the maniac managed to escape by jumping into the Dnieper River. In February, Kuznetsov returned to Russia and moved to Moscow. In the Izmailovsky Park area, the maniac committed 5 more reprisals similar in handwriting to the Kiev ones, February 25, 3, 9, 13 and March 21, 1992. Due to the recognizability of the criminal's handwriting, Moore's staff linked the appearance of a maniac in Moscow with his disappearance in Kiev. Representatives of Ukrainian law enforcement agencies invited to Moscow provided Moore with valuable information about the wanted criminal, including his sketch, which was distributed throughout the capital. Kuznetsov was identified by an employee of the bank branch in which the maniac had previously opened an account. The apartment of Kuznetsov's father in Balashikha, in which the maniac was registered, was taken under surveillance. Although the criminal himself did not appear there, he sent his mistress to this address with a request to transfer. "My father has money." This visit was recorded by the surveillance service. The woman, having learned about the suspicions about the roommate, agreed to help the operatives in his detention. In the apartment of Kuznetsov's mistress, an alarm system and an alarm button were installed, which she had to press when a maniac appeared. They did not establish surveillance of her apartment for fear of scaring off the criminal. On the evening of March 26, 1992, Kuznetsov appeared at his mistress's apartment, but sensing danger, he immediately left. Later, he said that she was acting strangely and he immediately sensed a trick. After the maniac left, the woman pressed the alarm button. Operatives urgently left for her. The woman said that she saw through the window how he went to the nearest tram stop. There was only one tram route near her house. Several operational groups were sent to check public transport. In one of the trams, operatives dressed in civilian clothes detained Kuznetsov, and a knife was seized from him during his arrest. After his arrest, Kuznetsov confessed to all the attacks, including those that were unknown to law enforcement agencies, and indicated the places where the crimes were committed. He was also identified by the surviving victims. During the search, women's things were found at the maniac. On December 1, 1993, the court sentenced Oleg Kuznetsov to death by firing squad. But since by that time Russia was joining the Council of Europe, in 1999 the sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. He served his sentence in the colony of Special Regime IK-1 Mordovian Zone, in the village of Sosnovka, Zubovo-Polyansky district of the Republic of Mordovia. Being in custody, he did not admit his guilt. No one visited him or sent him parcels. "I hardly talked to my cellmate." He died on August 4, 2000 from heart failure. Kuznetsov's death became known only in 2019. Why? His death was hidden unknown, we can only guess. Although the media wrote that the law enforcement officers did not hide it, but simply decided not to make it public, since all the relatives refused it anyway. 3 documentaries were made about him, which I recommend you to watch, and from where many fragments are taken. TV of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Inhumans, 1996, filmed in 2008 based on the case. Kuznetsov, a documentary film, The Trail of the Beast, from the cycle. The investigation was conducted with Leonid Kanevsky, Don't Execute My Killer, Part 2.